They want you dead. Not literally. That's too obvious. They want you spiritually dead, culturally dead, generationally dead. And the most twisted part? They're using your own people to kill you. Right now, as you're watching this, a young black girl is learning that her worth comes from how many men want to use her body. A young black boy is learning that intelligence makes him less black. Parents are watching their children choose ignorance over excellence because someone convinced them that dysfunction is authentic. This isn't happening by accident. This is warfare, psychological, cultural, economic warfare designed to make you destroy yourself while applauding your own destruction. They've convinced us that being loud and reckless is keeping it real, that academic success is acting white, that our trauma is entertainment, and our pain is profit. Each time a black person acts out in public, or someone dines and dashes, or whenever a fight video goes viral, the world doesn't say, "That's dysfunction." They say, "That's black." And the most dangerous part? We've started saying it too. But here's the truth they don't want you to face. This isn't culture. This is colonization repackaged as entertainment. Our ancestors built pyramids and kingdoms, survived the Middle Passage and Jim Crow. Now we're letting TikTok turn our pain into punchlines and calling it authentic. Today, we're ripping the mask off the lie that's been poisoning our community for decades. This is the story of how they convinced the world that ghetto equals black, how billion-dollar corporations feed off our dysfunction, and why we keep letting our worst moments drown out our greatest achievements. Mary Frances Winters thought she was giving our community a gift. In 2020, this diversity consultant published Black Fatigue: How Racism Erodes the Mind, Body, and Spirit, finally putting a name to something every black person in America knew but couldn't explain. Imagine walking into your office every morning knowing you have to be twice as good to get half the credit. Imagine code switching so many times a day you forget who you really are. Imagine your heart racing every time you see police lights, not because you've done anything wrong, but because history has taught you to fear. That's black fatigue, the bone-deep exhaustion of existing while black in America. Winters interviewed hundreds of black employees who described the same symptoms: sleepless nights, elevated blood pressure, anxiety attacks triggered by microaggressions so subtle they couldn't even prove they happened. For the first time, we had medical validation for what racism was doing to our bodies and minds. The American Heart Association recognized it. Researchers documented it. Finally, our pain had a name. But then the internet got hold of it. By the early 2020s, something sinister was happening across social media. Conservative users began hijacking Winters' term, twisting black fatigue into something completely different: their exhaustion with us. They took our clinical diagnosis of oppression and weaponized it as justification for their prejudice. Picture scrolling through TikTok and seeing #BlackFatigue attached to videos mocking loud conversations, customer complaints, anything that fit their stereotype of how black people behave. They stole the name for our trauma and turned it into ammunition against us. Now, let me paint you a scene that's become all too familiar. It's a Tuesday night at a black-owned restaurant. 3 customers have just finished hundreds of dollars worth of food. The server, a young black woman working her way through college, approaches with the check. She turns away for 30 seconds to help another table. When she turns back, they're gone. Security cameras catch them slipping out, one by one, leaving behind empty plates and an unpaid bill. Within hours, the footage is online. Within days, it has millions of views. Within weeks, it's become another piece of evidence that this is just how black people behave. But here's what those millions of viewers don't see. The server going home that night, knowing she won't make rent because she lost her tip. The restaurant owner, also black, watching decades of building community trust crumble in a viral moment. The thousands of black customers who will now face suspicious looks because of 3 people's actions. This is the cruel math of the algorithm. One bad moment can erase 1,000 good ones. But the stereotype goes beyond viral videos. Talk to any black server and they'll tell you the uncomfortable truth. Colleagues assume black customers won't tip well. This creates worse service, which leads to justified smaller tips, reinforcing the stereotype. Black servers report earning 30% less than white counterparts for identical service. Meanwhile, Black customers face subpar service, then feel pressured to over-tip to combat stereotypes, essentially paying extra for basic human dignity. Every family dinner becomes a performance to prove they're one of the good ones. And the platforms, they're counting money every time someone clicks share, every angry comment, every outraged reaction. TikTok's parent company reported over $80 billion in revenue for 2022, built partly on our trauma going viral. The algorithm doesn't care about context. It doesn't care that these 3 people don't represent 45 million Black Americans. It only cares about engagement, and nothing drives engagement quite like Black dysfunction. This is exactly why we created Black Stories Untold, to expose how they weaponize our pain against us and reclaim the narratives they've hijacked. If you believe these hidden truths need to be told, subscribe and help us fight back against the lies they're spreading about our community. Let's travel back to August 11th, 1973. A teenager named Clive Campbell, DJ Kool Herc, is setting up turntables in the recreation room at 1520 Sedgwick Avenue in the Bronx. He doesn't know it yet, but he's about to birth a culture that will conquer the world. For the first decade, hip-hop was pure joy. The Sugar Hill Gang made you want to dance. Grandmaster Flash made you think. When The Message dropped in 1982, it painted a stark picture of urban decay without glorifying it. It was social commentary with a conscience. But by 1988, something dark was happening in the boardrooms of major record labels. Sony, Warner, Universal, they saw dollar signs in our pain. Independent hip-hop labels that had nurtured the culture were being bought up like pieces on a chessboard. Carmen Ashurst Watson, former president of Def Jam Records, would later reveal the strategy. The time when we switched to gangsta music was the same time that the majors bought up all the independent labels. And I don't think that's a coincidence. Picture young artists walking into record label offices with conscious rap demos, only to be told they needed to be more hardcore to get signed. Imagine the moment when profit margins became more important than community impact. The numbers don't lie. Research analyzing 403 platinum rap songs from this era found that 22% contained misogynistic content, with the majority engaging in objectification and verbal degradation of women. This wasn't artistic evolution. This was corporate manipulation. They turned our music into a weapon against ourselves, and we helped them load the bullets. But the corruption went deeper than misogyny. Picture a 13-year-old boy in Atlanta listening to Future rap about popping Percocets. He doesn't hear pain, he hears success. Lean isn't a coping mechanism, it's a status symbol. Xanax isn't anxiety medication, it's a lifestyle brand. Trap music literally named itself after the street hustle, an entire genre celebrating the very lifestyle that devastated our communities during a dark time. Young Black men started calling themselves trappers, adopting a name tied to the very struggles that claimed their fathers. Picture a 10-year-old Black girl coming home from school and turning on the TV. What does she see? Representing her future? Women gyrating in bikinis, calling themselves baddies, competing for men who treat them like disposable objects. Our queens used to be Ida B. Wells, fearlessly investigating lynchings, Dorothy Height, organizing the March on Washington, Shirley Chisholm, running for president when the world said Black women belonged in kitchens. Now, the algorithm serves up influencers teaching Black girls that their worth comes from their body count, their plastic surgery, their ability to secure a bag from men. OnlyFans is sold as entrepreneurship. Studies show Black girls as young as 9 internalize these promiscuous images, developing body dysmorphia at higher rates than any other demographic. They're getting BBLs at 18, chasing a beauty standard that doesn't even look human. The cruelest part? They're told this degradation is liberation, that rejecting these images makes them pick-me's. They've weaponized feminism to keep our daughters trapped in cycles of objectification. They turned our queens into commodities and convinced us it was progress. Close your eyes and imagine the most prosperous Black community you can. Now multiply that by 10. That was Greenwood District in Tulsa, Oklahoma, between 1900 and 1921. They called it Black Wall Street, and the name wasn't an exaggeration. Picture walking down Greenwood Avenue in 1920. Elegant hotels with marble lobbies, theaters showing the latest films, banks with vaults full of black wealth, medical offices run by black doctors treating black patients with dignity. Dr. A.C. Jackson's surgical practice was so renowned that he was considered one of the finest surgeons in America, regardless of race. The Dreamland Theater seated 750 people and featured live orchestras. Children attended schools so well-funded, they outperformed white schools across the state. This wasn't an accident. O.W. Gurley bought 40 acres in 1906 and sold lots exclusively to black families. They built an economic ecosystem where black dollars circulated within the community 7 times before leaving. They proved that when we controlled our own narrative, we didn't just survive, we thrived. Then came May 31st, 1921. Picture thousands of white faces twisted with rage, descending on Greenwood like locusts. They didn't just burn buildings, they erased the very idea that black people could build something beautiful. Over 1,400 homes and businesses turned to ash. Millions of dollars in black wealth evaporated in hours. The blueprint was simple and devastating. Let black people build something magnificent, then destroy it completely. Make sure the history books forget we ever built it in the first place. Sound familiar? Here's how the machine works against us today. The algorithm already knows what will make hearts race and fingers tap. Black dysfunction drives instant engagement, while black excellence gets crickets. A fight video featuring black people, instant engagement. A graduation ceremony at an HBCU, crickets. The financial incentives are obscene. Viral dysfunction content generates massive advertising revenue, while creators and subjects receive crumbs. We're performing our own degradation for Silicon Valley's profit margins. When a black teenager opens TikTok, the algorithm immediately serves content designed to keep them engaged. Black women fighting over men, black men flashing fake money, teenagers shoplifting for clout. Instagram amplifies this with beauty filters targeting black girls, creating a generation whose self-worth depends on likes and male validation. The platforms know this is harmful, but harm is profitable. They've turned our pain into their business model, while the millions of black Americans excelling in boardrooms, classrooms, and communities remain invisible. Let me take you back to 1865. 4 million people have just been freed from slavery with nothing but the clothes on their backs. What happened next should be taught in every school in America. Within 12 years, these formerly enslaved people had built thousands of schools across the South. Picture families pooling their last dollars to hire teachers, studying by candlelight after 16-hour workdays. By 1870, Fisk University, Howard University, and Morehouse College were training black doctors, lawyers, and engineers. Politically, they shattered every racist myth about black intellectual capacity. Multiple black men served in Congress during the 1870s. South Carolina elected a black majority legislature in 1868. These were the products of organized movements that registered hundreds of thousands of new voters. But in 1877, federal troops withdrew from the South, and the systematic destruction began. The war on black progress didn't end with Reconstruction. It just got more sophisticated. In 1994, John Ehrlichman, President Nixon's former domestic policy advisor, made a stunning admission. The war on drugs, he claimed, was designed to target black communities. We knew we couldn't make it illegal to be either against the war or black. But by getting the public to associate the hippies with MJ and blacks with heroin, and then criminalizing both heavily, we could disrupt those communities. The strategy worked. Between 1980 and 2000, black male incarceration rates skyrocketed. Rock carried sentences 100 times harsher than powder coke. While they locked up our fathers and brothers, media conglomerates launched a parallel assault, vastly overrepresenting black participation in brutal crime. They couldn't let the world remember that we had built a functioning democracy from nothing, so they made sure we couldn't build another one. Starting in the 1990s, something insidious began happening in marketing departments across America. They developed strategies targeting black communities that emphasized authenticity and street credibility, while systematically avoiding anything that promoted education or traditional success. Picture a generation of black children absorbing messages that academic achievement was acting white, that financial success meant abandoning their community, that authentic blackness required rejecting mainstream opportunities. The programming worked. Studies documented shifts in attitudes toward academic achievement among some black teenagers compared to previous decades. This wasn't coincidence. It was the result of decades of psychological warfare designed to make us sabotage our own futures. They convinced us that our own excellence was somehow betrayal. But here's what they never counted on: our ability to recognize the game and refuse to play it. Real black culture isn't what goes viral on TikTok. It's the Tuskegee Airmen compiling an outstanding combat record while facing segregation. It's Katherine Johnson calculating trajectories that put Americans in space. It's the teacher working double shifts, the nurse saving lives, the entrepreneur creating jobs in overlooked communities. These are our real representatives. They just don't generate clicks. The solution is simple. Stop letting the loudest, most destructive voices speak for the quietest, most productive majority. When you see that viral video of black dysfunction, don't share it. Share the black scientist who just made a breakthrough. Share the black student who got into Harvard. Share the black family building generational wealth. If this opened your eyes to the war being waged against our image, subscribe to Black Stories Untold and become part of the resistance. Share this with someone who needs to remember their power. The lie ends now. The truth begins with us.